tell me about FUNBOY.
Yeah, FUNBOY, he was this guy who, I moved to Baltimore to go to grad school at Johns Hopkins. And I didn't have, and to me, it was like a good thing that I moved to Baltimore because like my, connections I knew with dope and stuff were in New York, and Chicago and places. And I didn't know anyone in Baltimore. And this was at a time when my addiction was still forming. And so I wasn't like strung out. But I remember my girlfriend came to visit me, and she was the person I'd done dope with the first time, and she was living in New York. And our relationship was kind of like, it was kind of falling apart in that like it was one of those relationships where it totally works when you're high and or drunk or whatever, and then like it's not, it's like there it's like it's dead. So
Yeah.
she came to visit me, and we were like wandering around, and we saw this guy came up to us, this kind of like um just kind of a kind of cool kid looking guy, and he just came up, and we were on the near the pier in Fells Point in Baltimore, and she was asking him if we started to talk to him, and she asked him if we could get any pot, and he was like, yeah. And then we were like, well, what about dope? And he was like, oh yeah. He's like, I'm a dope fiend. And that's how I met him. And we just had this this friendship that lasted a few years. And he was a total dope fiend. That was his life. He'd made a life in it. And the weird thing was, he was one of the few people I've met in addiction who just early on committed and like never thought of getting off. Like it never even entered his mind. It was weird. It was always entering my mind once I got strung out. I was always obsessing about it. But FUNBOY was just like, this is what life is. This is the zone. And yeah, I just rode with him for, he hooked me with all the dope spots, and I met all these like truly crazy people and situations in Baltimore. Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah, it's crazy how some people can be so fully bought in to that lifestyle because like you said, you were having thoughts of maybe this isn't good, maybe I should quit, my life matters even when you were high. And then Fun Boy sounds like he was the skydiver of heroin addicts where he was just like, fuck it, like I'm jumping out of the plane. I hope the parachute pulls, but if it doesn't, like, fuck it, like this is what's gonna happen.
Yeah, and
It didn't sound like he had a parachute. It sounded like he just jumped out of the plane.
there was no parachute. Yeah, he was,
Yeah.
and he was, and a big part of it was like, my family came from Ireland, and it was like working class kind of zone. But I had gotten it together. I did well in college, and I got a full ride to go to Johns Hopkins for my grad. So I did have objectively things going on in my life with FUNBOY. And this is a lot of this has to do with the age people get on dope. He got strung out when he was like 16. I met him when he was
Mhm.
my age in his 20s, but he got strung out when he's 16. And it's like, that's just hard, man. That's your whole sense of yourself. You're coming into your sense of yourself at that age. And if dope is this world that gets open to you at that moment, it's hard. You don't know anything else. You don't have anything else. And so that was for him, he was just committed, and it was just a whole different orientation to life. Like I remember him being like, and he like taught me how to get along in that zone. Like we would go to, I'll never forget it. We went to this music store one time, and he was a musician. He's a good musician. We went to this music store, and he was like looking for like picks or whatever. And then he was like, check this out, dude. And he took a guitar, a nice guitar, and like stole, he just walked out with it. And like, it was like he was invisible. And I was like, oh my God. And like, he was the best thief I've ever seen he was like the best shoplifter I've ever seen in my entire life. We used to go to Home Depot, and he would walk out with like power tools, like all kinds of shit. He was just it was like he had this like ghost mode he would go into, the stealth mode. He would like press some kind of button. It was very impressive.
It's like those guys that carry in ladders to the Super Bowl. They have the security jacket and they just walk through, no one questions them. The confidence, they're just holding a ladder like they've done it 1,000 times before. I'm sure if you become a dope addict as a teenager, you get all it makes it like you get a lot of repetitions of stealing shit. So eventually you're gonna get like a swagger when you do it, just like anything else with writing or podcasting, sports. Like you start to be like, yeah, I've done this 1,000 times. I know it's gonna go right. I'm just gonna fucking steal this bag of fertilizer real quick and flip it on the street.
Yeah, 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 totally. And for him, he had this very particular kind of face where when you looked at it, it just kind of communicated that everything was mellow. Everything is like okay here, you know what I mean? And like people would look at him and he just had this kind of face that could get away with it. And I've known junkies um who couldn't, people have their own hustles and some people just couldn't do that and so they turned to other sorts of things, but he had that and he was a really sweet guy. He was like a super there was something really childlike about him. Like throughout all of that, he had this real simplicity and kind of earnestness about him and a kind of weird faith and belief in dope. As strange as that sounds, it was like he kind of had this belief like this is gonna be okay. And and I haven't seen I haven't seen him for over 20 years and I hope he's still alive. I hope he's doing okay. But it was just one of those friendships under these extreme circumstances where there's still a human dimension to it. You know what I mean? It's not purely transactional or like, just 1,000% oriented towards drugs. It was, but there was also this like it was like there was a hurricane one time that came to Baltimore, like the
Mm,
remnants of a hurricane. And I remember FUNBOY and I were like holed up in this like abandoned building, of which there used to be a lot in Baltimore. There probably still are. And it just felt that moment where we're holed up inside with this hurricane kind of raging outside. It felt like this is like what it is for us. You know what I mean? It's like this experience of being in this like catastrophe and we're just like hanging on and creating this little space to kind of like shelter from it.
yeah.